Hey guys, it's Ashley and this is Downright Bookish, and today I'm going to be reviewing Riot Baby. So Riot Baby comes out on Tuesday, January 21st, and I think this is the perfect time for this book to come out because it's right after Martin Luther King Day. So yeah, I think superb timing for this. I was sent a copy of this book by Tor.com. So thank you, Tor, for sending me this copy so I could read it and share it to my audience before it comes out. It's a novella and it's really short, but it packs a lot of impact and I'm really excited to talk about it with you. So without further ado, let's just get into the review. So this review will be completely non-spoiler, so for all of you that are interested, are curious about this book, I'll be giving you a little more into it and giving you my thoughts on whether or not I think you should buy it on Tuesday. So, Riot Baby follows our two main characters, Kev and Ella, and they are brother and sister. Ella has this very unique power that they call the Thing with a capital T, and she has the ability to kind of see into the future, but also some weird other elements to her power that I don't want to give too much away, but it's definitely, she has a lot of capabilities that could endanger her and the people around her if she doesn't get the control of her powers. Sorry, my dog is moving around. So Kev and Ella live with their single mother in New York City. Ella is coping with a lot of issues. She's trying to deal with being able to control her abilities, and a lot of her inability to control it is because of her anger, which stems a lot from how African Americans are treated and a lot of the police brutality that is going on. It's kind of unclear when exactly this takes place, but there are a lot more futuristic elements towards the end of the book, which I'll go into a little bit more. But mentions of some of the more famous police brutality cases are mentioned in this, as well as the Detroit and riots in California in 1992. And then we have Kev, who's kind of in the shadow of his sister and kind of is dealing with his own issues and kind of coming to terms with living in a dangerous neighborhood and what that means for a black man or a black boy and growing up in that situation. The book, what basically results in this story is that Kev is incarcerated and Ella must figure out whether she wants to help him escape from that situation or how she wants to use her powers to basically help black people that have been wrongfully incarcerated or wrongfully treated in America. The synopsis that they are kind of presenting this book to be really focuses on more of this dystopian world, which I think is much more covered towards the end half of the story. And I think that kind of does this story injustice. It's much more a story about race, but it also has this very magical, surreal element to it because of the fact that Ella has this ability to see the future and kind of other aspects to her ability too. The outline of her abilities are not clearly stated. There's never anywhere in the book where it's this is exactly what she can do, but we kind of see her abilities through her actions throughout the story. What I liked most about this story were the two characters. They both are dealing with very different situations. Ella is kind of living in seclusion because she doesn't want to harm people with her ability, and Kev spends most of this book in jail. I think what this book was able to capture really well was what it's like to be a black man incarcerated and also be not what you would stereotypically consider to be a convict, I guess. I feel the stereotype is that all convicts are either drug dealers or they're not intelligent, but Kev kind of breaks all those stereotypes in a very interesting way. And if you've seen the Netflix series When They See Us, I think this book portrays what it's like to be incarcerated in a much more distilled and more impactful way. But I think it does it as well as When They See Us. If you really enjoyed that series, I think you'll really enjoy this book as well, because it kind of conveys those very similar themes. I also liked about this book is the insert of Ella's magical power, because while you think that because Ella has these superpowers that allow her to pretty much do much more than, way more than the average person, this would give her some advantage to kind of help her brother or help the people she cares about. But even despite that, it still doesn't really do that, and she's still a black woman, and it has all the dangers that come associated with that, despite her ability to see into the future and kind of see into people's minds and that sort of thing. So it's still like, while she has this power, she's still powerless to racism and the systematic racism that is in America, which I found to be very interesting. And I like that juxtaposition between like her ability and the powerlessness that her brother feels in his situation. There are a lot of like minor characters in this book, and because it's such a small story, you would expect them to be less developed, but I feel like every character is in there for a reason, and you get such a real life you feel for those characters, even though they're smaller characters and they may only play into the story for like 2 to 3 pages, but you feel for them, you feel their story, and you feel their life, and it just feels so real to me. His writing in this was very lyrical and very beautiful, and at times I did feel like the beautiful writing did take away from kind of centering us in the story. There were a few parts where I was kind of confused about what was going on, what the time period was like, or where we were in the setting of the story. So at times you kind of lose the groundness that the story sets up because of the beautiful writing, but overall I think you really feel grounded in the story despite the fact that it's so lyrically written. And I want to talk about the dystopian aspect, because that's a little bit, that's how this book is kind of being marketed, as this is a dystopian world, and then these two brothers and sisters are kind of coping to deal with that. I feel like the dystopian aspect is a less of a feature or a theme in this story. You really don't realize that the story takes place in a future setting until probably like the last third of the book. Then there are some pieces that show like mechanical police officers that are designed to be unbiased, but the formula is created by white men, so there is some room for bias. So there is an interesting question about what it would be like if police officers were replaced by androids. And then there's also this question of what would being on parole look like in this more futuristic world where they're kind of tracking you through this microchip and that sort of thing. And I think those issues were delved into, but obviously because this is such a short story, they weren't explored as deeply as some of the other themes in the book that more deal with like race, how to deal with anger towards these things, and what is the best course of action when you have this anger that you really can't control or can't do anything with. And I think that part of the book is done really, really well. I always have that issue with novellas, is that like I just want more from the story usually, and that's the case with this as well, is that I feel like this could have been a much longer story, but I also appreciate that he wanted to convey it in such a small package, because I feel I could see how this book would be longer. It could drain on you emotionally a lot more, and I think he just kind of wanted to convey an emotion he was feeling too. Overall, I really enjoyed this book, and it reminded me a lot of When They See Us, the Netflix series, but it's very different because there's magical elements and it also takes place in the future. But I think if that story, the way that story impacted me is very similar to the way this story impacted me, and I really enjoyed it. I really liked his writing. I really think he has a knack for doing very interesting things in a very small length of pages, I guess. I don't know. I wasn't expecting to be so invested in the characters and so emotional about these characters in a less than 200-page book. I was very much more attached to Kev in this story. I think he is kind of like the star of the story. While Ella does play an important part, he's just really the most important piece to the story. And I forgot to mention as well, sorry, this is going to be a rambly review, but I had to gush about everything about this book. The way he captures the neighborhood that they live in at the very beginning of the book, it kind of talks about them growing up as children as well, and the way he captures that neighborhood, the people he encounters, is just spectacular. It feels so familiar to me, and I loved that feeling. I loved that he did not shy away from the reality of what it's like to live in a predominantly Black neighborhood, and he just laid it all bare for you. There's a lot to uncover in this little package, but I was thoroughly impressed with the writing as well as how the story unfolded and the many themes. Like, I will be reading this book again because I feel like there's a lot that I'm going to be giving this book a 4 out of 5 stars and just knocking that 1 star down, just because I felt like sometimes the lyrical language took away from me kind of understanding what was happening in the story. But other than that, so thanks again for watching. Let me know if Riot Baby sounds like something you'd be interested in, if you're gonna pick it up, and I will see you guys very soon with another video. Bye!